Hello. How are y'all? Welcome to our monthly meeting, the Texas Normal monthly meeting at the Flamingo Cantina. How are y'all doing? Yes. It's been a good Wednesday. It's hump day. I like it. So this is going to be a rehash type of meeting where we're going to talk about a lot of stuff that happened. And then I kind of want to take some questions in case you guys are unclear maybe about the session and what happened, some of the bills, and then we're going to talk a little bit about our plans moving forward into the next 2-year cycle, because that's how it works here in Texas. So first of all, who here is at the meeting for the first time tonight? Raise your hand. We got some new, awesome, all right there. I mean, technically. And how many people here are Texas Normal members? Raise your hand. Awesome. And board members, raise your hand. So if you guys have any questions about things going on with the legislature, any of the people holding up their hands right now can help answer those questions for you, all right? All of us kind of do different things. We have women's outreach, we have a cancer group, we have a patient group, veteran outreach. We also have an athletics team where we do an athletic event at least once a year. So we do a lot of different stuff. But let's get to the meat of what we've really been working on the last 6 months. Oh, but before I do that, we're doing a giveaway. So if you are interested in getting one of our Texas Normal hats, make sure that you sign up at the table before the end of the meeting, okay? All right, so let's talk about the legislative session. It was really busy. We had a lot of bills, and we had a lot of in-depth events and planning and strategy that we put into play this session. And I have to say I'm very impressed, and I want to say thank you to all of our volunteers, because this was busy like no session I have seen before. In fact, I can categorically say I've never seen a session like this just overall in general. And people showed up to our direct actions that we were holding every other week. People showed up 300, 400 strong at our lobby day. We also had patient lobby days, veteran lobby days. Operation Trapped brought in hundreds of pill bottles and thousands of signatures, and we were delivering those. So we did a lot of high-impact visibility things at the Capitol to really change people's minds and perceptions about cannabis and the rules surrounding it, the laws, I should say. So, yes, it was a lot of work. So I want to talk about some of the bills that we were focusing on, and the first one I want to talk about is HB 2200. It was authored by Gina Hinojosa, and she actually is a representative for the greater Austin area, and it's what I would qualify as a legacy bill. She took over for Representative Nate Stadt, who had been authoring this bill since, I want to say 2001. I could be a little bit off on that. But that was kind of one of the first real reform bills since the 70s in Texas. And it's been filed every session since. And she continued that legacy. The bill was heard in the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee. That may seem like it doesn't make sense, but the reason why it was there is it actually deals with how the justice system would offer an affirmative defense for patients, caregivers, and doctors. So doctors can lose their licenses if they talk about cannabis. That would give them a protection for that. Also, having an affirmative defense, it has a slightly different preponderance of evidence, I think is the proper term. And so it's nice to have that codified for patients to be able to easily use. It had a hearing, and they didn't take a vote on it, unfortunately. They polled the committee, and even though the committee was very supportive of the civil penalties bill, there was a few of the Republicans that just couldn't get on board with it. And so hopefully next time around we can affect those Republicans' minds. The Criminal Jurisprudence Committee is chaired by Chairman Moody, who is an author of the civil penalties bill. Yeah, he's awesome. We love him. And so we were very thankful that he made sure that we had our hearing. However, on the committee, there's a majority of Republicans, and they didn't want to come over and vote yes, unfortunately. So then HB 2107, that's the Comprehensive Whole Plant Medical Cannabis Bill, and it was first filed in the Senate way before session even started. But it didn't really catch any traction in the Senate. And then Kara Zartler's story came out, I believe, end of February, beginning of March, and a few legislators were just so moved that they were finally ready to author the bill that was available, the medical cannabis bill. And so they took it and they filed it, and they had about 5 authors on it whenever a hearing was held for it. Now, the hearing was held pretty late. I was almost afraid that they weren't going to hold a hearing for it, but I'm very thankful that Chairman Price did. So he held the hearing, and it was a extremely impactful and poignant hearing. I would say that it was one of the most powerful hearings that I've been to, and I've been working at the legislature since 2005. Everyone did a really wonderful job of targeting their message, making it as powerful as possible, and showing a tour de force of making sure that parents showed up for their kids, veterans showed up for their service-related disabilities. And, you know, it was a long hearing. It did go into the I want to say almost midnight or just after midnight. I can't really remember. It runs together sometimes. 1 or 2 a.m. I think that's right, Memphis. I think you're right. So that hearing really changed the game. Because along with that hearing, we backed it up with resources. We dropped off to every committee member a binder that was about 2 inches thick of scientific facts. We dropped off a patient testimony binder of dozens of testimonies with pictures of people who wanted access. There's a veterans binder that we did the same thing for. And additionally, mamas, I'm not sure if you're aware of them, but Mothers Advocating for Medical Marijuana for Autism also put together a beautiful binder of all of their kids that they're really advocating to get safe access for. So on top of this, hearing, we also gave out these really great resources for them to be able to reflect upon. And within 36 hours, we had 77 co-authors to the bill, which is a majority of the representatives in the House. And that's impressive. Very impressive. Now, in order to get those authors signed on, that quantity, the original authors of the bill did make a few concessions, but they were able to maintain all of the conditions that were listed, the whole plant access, the amendment from prescription to recommend, which is really integral in it working, and a few other really key things. So it was still a very quality, good bill that would help a lot of people. So the bill was going from Chairman Price's committee to Calendar's committee. And that can take about 3 days on average. However, it can happen in a matter of hours if people are really gung-ho about it. So ours was starting the enrollment process within 2 days, which is technically about quicker than average. However, it takes 5 steps to get fully enrolled in Calendars before you're actually before the chair to be put on the agenda for the House floor. And we missed that deadline by 2 hours. It was officially enrolled, I want to say around 8 p.m., and the last Calendars meeting was around 5:30. So we did not make it, we did not beat the clock on that, and that bill died there. However, our champions, as I like to call them in the House, didn't give up. They continued to look for bills to try to amend things. So there was the CPS bills, and they worked to amend it to put on protections so that at least these parents, like Kara's parents, who are medicating kids, won't be harassed by CPS. So they attempted to do that. It didn't make it through the Senate conference. Unfortunately, it was stripped. And then additionally, they tried to find some of the sentencing reform bills and adjust those, but we couldn't find that one that was exactly germane to add the civil penalties bill to. But that leads me to the civil penalties bill, which had it was pre-filed, had a great hearing early on, was enrolled in Calendars, and the chairman kind of sat on it for a little bit longer than he had kind of said he would, but he did put it on the agenda. And then in comes just like what has been the most ridiculous session. I mean, I think you guys know there's been a lot of issues that are very contentious going on. Essentially, to avoid some of these bills, the House waited till as late as I think they have in recent history to actually assign committees. and then those committees take their time on their hearings, and then you have to go through the House. So essentially there's this cadre of bills that different groups are not wanting to get to, so they use these deleterious actions to avoid meeting them. And so because of a certain group, kind of dawdling for one bill and another group dawdling for another bill, it ended up being that our bill was put on the agenda, but it died with another 200 very important bills. And on those bills, some of them, if it's important and not as subjective, but now they're being put on this special session. So special session is being held because of all these deleterious actions. So that is how 81 ended. However, we've never had a bill of that magnitude on the agenda before. It didn't make it that far last time, so that's a big step for us. On the medical front, with a majority of the representatives in the House being signed on to that bill, it makes it a real campaign topic. And that's going to feed into what I talk about with our upcoming strategy and plan a little bit. But it's extremely important that we continue to cultivate those 72 representatives or 77 representatives and make sure that they feel the support for what they did. So next session, we can really push medical through the House and focus more on the Senate, which has proven to be a difficult chamber of the House. Not gonna lie, they're pretty tough cookies. Let's see, did I cover what I wanted to cover on the bills? Yeah. So I wanted to talk about overall also how a movement, not related to direct legislation, but I want to talk about some things that I've personally noticed that we've all kind of grown into in the last 2 years. Talking about the interaction level at the Capitol, I mean, it is super professional, next level what's happening at the Capitol. And people really notice what's going on, and they're talking about, hey, I forgot what I was going to say. You guys just walked in, and I was like, hey, girls. So it's also changing the tone that people are conversing with their representatives in. It's very easy to be angry about some of these things that are happening and be very frustrated, rightfully so. But I've consistently noticed that people choose to be positive with their interactions. For example, one of the things that people did for medical cannabis, National Prayer Day was, I think, the day after the hearing, and everyone just comment bombed Chairman Price with the most positive, succinct requests for a vote. And because of all the pressure applied to him, all the tweets, all the comments, all of that, he put it up for a vote. And let me tell you, it is extremely rare. In fact, our lobbyist said only once in the 17 years he's been working at the Capitol has a chairman put a vote up on a bill that they knew they were going to vote no on. So essentially, all of us were really able to mess with the system. If we had not had these respectful, continued, targeted interactions, we may not have ended up with that vote, because I think that they might have just let it die because he was going to vote no on it. And so I think that we all need to put that as a feather in our hat, that even though the chairman voted no, we got a vote. And that is a huge deal. Because besides the CBD program, we have no recorded votes on whole plant medical cannabis until now. And so that's really important. Yeah, it's a lot. So before I go on to discussing real quick the updating or the updated voting record for the legislators in this area, because I do want to touch on those with you guys real quick, I wanted to see if there was any questions, just a couple questions about anything I talked about. The process, the bills, any of the actions that we took, any questions? I mean, you guys are all kind of here a lot. You know what's up. Okay, what can we do to help set ourselves up for success in the next session? So, don't take a break. Rest up, but don't take a break. This is a marathon. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon, it's a long haul, and we have to make sure that we continue interactions, even during the interim, because that's when you have the most impact. Be involved in the primaries of your party. so that you can make sure that the people that are up there are people that have good policy on cannabis. And we'll have a voter's guide for you. Make sure that you're involved in the convention process so that you can take and help format the platform planks of the parties. For example, last time around we were able to get a medical cannabis plank added to the Republican platform. That is a huge deal. We could go and show it to every Republican that they were abiding by their platform. And you know what? We got to keep it. So if you're a Republican, go and show up from the primary all the way to the convention, state convention process. And then from there, it's showing up and voting. And even besides voting, if you have a legislator that's supportive of this issue or is kind of on the fence and you could help nudge them over, it's extremely important to have your face be seen. Volunteer for them. And just put in a couple hours, but having your face being seen, that means that they're going to, later in the session, recognize you and be like, oh, that person helps me, they helped me get elected, they helped me after I was elected, I need to really listen to this person. It may sound silly, but they actually do take note of people who are really active in the area. So even if it's just going to a town hall meeting or two, or making sure you have an in-district visit, so you don't have to come up to the Capitol, you can do it in-district. Doing those type of things in the interims is going to be really important to build up for the future so that we can continue the good relationships. And, you know, a lot of you guys are from the greater Austin area, and the fact of the matter is that we have some really good legislators in our area concerning our issue, which I'll go over. But it's important that we show up and support them and make sure that they know that we want them to be continuing what they're doing and maybe even doing more, right? Oh, you know what? I didn't talk about the hemp bill. There's a hemp bill, didn't talk about it. It had a good hearing with not a lot of speakers, which was per the request of the author, but very well done, targeted testimony from some great professionals and business people and actual farmers. And that bill was voted unanimously out of committee. It was pretty awesome. So last session, there was a research-only hemp bill and an industrial hemp bill. They just went straight for the industrial hemp bill this time and dropped the research only. So it was the industrial that passed unanimously, so that's really awesome. However, it didn't get scheduled on the agenda. So farmers were not very happy about that. I know, I feel you, I feel you. Let me bring it back up with how awesome we are real quick, though. What's that? Yes, it passed out of committee and it was unanimous. So, I mean, that's a really big deal. So that's the thing is, we didn't have the big win, but we had a lot of really important tactical wins and figurative wins along the way, not only with actual movement and placing, you know, where the place marker is for where we have to be next time, but also really changing the conversation up at the Capitol. I mean, people I didn't even know were walking up to me telling me how impressed they were with how people came out and really were professional and educated at the Capitol this session. I mean, staffers were saying it. And let me tell you, a couple years ago when I would just be having meetings with patients, I would get like jokes about like, oh, did you bring any for me? You got any samples? You know, like, it's so funny, right, that these patients don't have access. It's super funny. And everyone's laughing about it. Not really. And now, I actually went and delivered some thank yous to our authors, right? A little thing of flowers, a little tray of some brownies, a little thank you note, right? And out of the like dozen offices that we went to, only 2 made a joke about brownies. I mean, I gave them an opportunity, and they didn't take me up on it, because they take it seriously. And the 2 that made the joke, I had kind of a pithy comeback about how the felony's not worth it. But thank you for your work. So that was another good thing that you can notice at the Capitol is the change in tone, it becoming a more serious conversation. People being taken more seriously. And I mean, you have to think 28 of the people that signed on to the medical cannabis bill were Republicans. And some of them really high-ranking Republicans. High-ranking sounds weird. It's not the military, but I mean, that's how it is. Yeah, so thank you for that question. I took forever to answer it. Are there any other questions, Preston?
Okay, so most of the bills got in calendars. What can we do to
So the thing is that Todd Hunter is an enigma. He has literally said on the House floors, if you don't want to build and make it, just pass it to me and I'll take care of it. So it's hard to really root out who's tagging them to say, not this bill, not this time. So Todd Hunter is definitely going to be a big focus of us positively encouraging him through his DA and his sheriff and through his constituents. No big deal. And that's another thing. I just want to say I'm really proud of everybody for whenever it came time to act on an action alert, y'all did it. And then whenever we were like, no, stop calling, you stopped calling and it was perfect. And did you know that we had almost 100,000 emails that were sent to the Capitol? I mean, it's amazing. Like, I was boasting last time around, like, we got like 35,000, it's amazing. No, we had like a lot more. And it's amazing to be able to show people that, like, no, if you don't want to listen on our issue, we're going to call you out. It's going to be respectful, but your phones might shut down. And then whenever you call me and say, hey, but let's talk, then we'll turn it off. So everybody keep that up. Whenever an action alert comes out, please engage whenever we ask you to do that. It is the way to be involved, even if you're not able to be up at the Capitol. Yes. And whenever it's time to pause your calls, then it's definitely time. Because sometimes we just have to let them do their work. And if they can't even get away from the phone, then they can't be working on our bill. So there's a time and a place to show that force and that power, and I think we did a good job of that this session, so keep it up. Any other questions? Anybody? Any other questions? Yes, Memphis? He was asking if any of the cannabis bills made it in special session. 81 in particular, no, none of them made it into special session. It's illegal to grow hemp in Texas. You have to import it. I'm so sorry. Yeah. Until we can change the law. Yeah. It's and actually, CBD is this really weird kind of gray zone right now with the Texas Compassionate Use Program starting up. I mean, it's scheduled, and so some people have, been rated regarding it. Some patients have been harassed regarding it. So I just also tell everyone to be careful about the CBD. If it's labeled improperly, they will mess with you. And so it needs to really be making sure that you're seeing it as a nutritive supplement, and make sure where it's from. There have been some warning letters put out about how some of the CBD is being sourced from, hemp from China, or maybe the labeling doesn't reflect what's actually in there. So until there's a sourced regulated market, just be extra careful on what you're doing, and remember that concentrates are a felony. Okay. That means brownies, and they can include the weight of the additives and dilutants, meaning the sugar, eggs, chocolate, okay? So you can have a few grams of cannabis in your edible, and then it weighs out to 1.5 pounds, and you're facing life in jail. What? Yes. Yes. Yes, I agree with you. Any other questions real quick before I move on to upcoming events? Did I cover it? Oh, go ahead. Hi. So the special session, I have not seen anything germane to our issue that we could carry an amendment onto. That doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, but I haven't seen it. So I don't want to say that that's going to necessarily happen. I think what we have to focus on is, as I said before, engaging with current legislatures, engaging through the primary as we, figure out who they're going to have for that position, and then moving forward into legislative session after that. Another thing to add on to what Preston was asking about is how to get them out of calendars is also pre-filing. So our bill that made it the farthest was the one that was filed on day one, right? And so we have to make sure all of them are pre-filed. Now, on the Senate, we had medical bill, but on the House, people were afraid to author it until Kara really changed that kind of idea around cannabis, right? And then, oh my gosh, this is hurting kids. And the Texas Compassionate Use Program isn't helping them because a lot of the legislators are under the misconception that they have legalized medical marijuana for patients. No, CBD oil for people with intractable epilepsy. That's it, currently, right? So we need to make the bill more inclusive. And so, next time around we have these 77 authors who should be chomping at the bit, one of them to file it, right, early. So my goal is to make sure that we have it filed, as soon as possible and do that. Did you have a question, Hillary?
The people who are licensed under companies to grow CBD plants in Texas, will their products be, exported out of Texas? Are they limited to sales in Texas?
I believe that they are limited to sales in Texas. That is my understanding.
So is the market really going to be that large?
No. The market will not be a large market because it's intractable epilepsy.
But I mean, realistically, does that mean they're preparing for a larger market in the future?
So I personally don't think that business people would be spending as high as they have decided our fees to be without foreseeing that at some point they're not going to be cash flow negative, right? Because doing a small market with CBD only, it doesn't take, a rocket scientist to figure out that you're not going to be cash flow positive. It doesn't make the math, right? So I have to think logically that they understood they wouldn't put that money up if they didn't think at some point they were going to reap that reward. I don't know if they were expecting that this session or if they're wanting to implement first and then roll it out, because that's what I was hearing a lot of. We want to see how Teacup rolls out.
That's what I want to know is who are they working with to do that?
Working with to do what?
To push legislation in the future?
Well, until they got their licenses, they weren't probably working with anyone. So, now that's starting, and that happened a month or two ago, so I don't know who to tell you that about. Yeah. Yes?
I didn't really get the whole scoop on HB 81.
HB 81 was pre-filed. It had a hearing.
But it's dead in water.
Yes. Correct. So none of the bills that were filed are still options. Session is over. Unless we are on the list of items for special session, it's done. However, keep in mind that interim studies can be requested and done even without legislation authoring it. So if some of our champions are able to convince some of these chairs in the interim to do some studies, then that gives us an even better foothold for next session. Okay? So if you go to our website, there's a Who Represents Me button, and you can search through there, and it'll bring up everyone that represents you. And as far as changing cannabis law in Texas, it's your Texas House Representatives and your Texas State Senators that oversee those laws.
And they should have local offices.
Yes, local offices. You might want to make sure you call in advance before dropping by. Usually June and July is a little bit of a summer break for them, and then they start prepping for the campaign trail. So that's what I'm saying, it doesn't really stop. It's always going, and there's always something for us to do, and the level that we choose to put into it is what we'll get back from it. So let's make sure we stay dedicated on that. Thanks. All right, I want to talk also really quickly about some events coming up. Nisha Whiteley has spoken at some of our events before. She is a great research scientist, and she put a book together called Akila is our patient outreach officer, and she's been working with the Lopez family, and they're putting together a Patient Alliance for Cannabis Therapeutics meeting, which is a patient empowerment and support meeting. So patients can get together, they can talk about their issues, their health issues. They can also talk about cannabis, how it helps them, maybe do some research, and also get ready for the session. It's a great way to coordinate. We did a lot of binders with testimony. And when I'm telling you, like, write your story now into a one-pager, I'm not kidding. It needs to just be ready. Just be ready. You never know. You get 5 days notice on a hearing. So just go ahead and write it. And come to a meeting like the Patient Alliance for Cannabis Therapeutics meeting, and they'll help you kind of tailor that message, maybe help you with some of the wording if you're having trouble, and just kind of talk you through that type of stuff. So if you're interested in that, that's also something really cool that you can get from it. Also, we'll be back here at Flamingo Cantina on the next first Wednesday. I forgot what the actual date is, so look at your own calendar for that. July sometime, I think it's the 5th. 5th, remembered it. So on that note, I want to remind everybody that there's a giveaway, and I'm about to like pull the name out. So, Betty, can I has that? Can I has it? All right, so we have this hat right here. Ta-da. It's so fresh and so clean. I don't know what to do. I can't look. Look away. Look away. Jason Heinig. Is that your last name? Oh, well, there you go. Bartender wins the hat. And don't forget to tip your bartender, too. And thank you, big thank you to Flamingo Cantina for letting us be here. It's so nice to be able to get together with you guys and have these kind of casual meetings where we can really talk about what's been going on. I'll be around afterwards, and we're going to, I think, have some comedy coming up, but I haven't seen Mikey yet. So we'll see what happens. Is he here? Mikey! Hey, Mikey. So Mikey's going to, like, supposedly make you laugh. Like, no pressure. You better make them laugh. Are you ready? All right, and then also, Mau Mau Chap.